Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Maddie B. And football season has officially kicked off with the Hall of Fame game. I know, Coach, you guys have Heat Acclimation started. What do you have planned for that?
Well, basically it's to help out the kids that stayed in their house all summer and didn't enjoy the nice weather. They get the rude awakening of running a lot, because in Pennsylvania they have a heat acclimation period where you have 1 week where you're allowed to practice, but you're not allowed pad to pad contact. So you're not running the old school Oklahoma drills and hitting body to body. Like, it's more get used to being in the sun, get used to practicing the tempo. You have a chance to install some of your basic stuff offensively and defensively, and just kind of see who's actually coming out. Because with some programs, just like ours, that you have kids that they spend time with parents that maybe don't live in the district or different things like that, where they're out of the area, and now that it's a little bit closer to school, you find out exactly who's playing. As far as our numbers, I was actually pretty surprised that we're around 30 kids, which is pretty good for a single A program, and the kids that we have this year are really good kids. Like, I don't have a lot of, at least as of day 2, we don't have a lot of kids that are looking for the easy way out. So I'm really appreciative of that.
So it's not mandatory?
It is. Well, you have to have heat acclimation in order to next week participate in contact. You have to have so many heat acclimation days before you can have your contact days. And then if you don't have your contact days, then you're not able to participate in the scrimmage, which would be next Saturday.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. So you couldn't just be lazy and just show up next week and take another week off.
Right.
So
if you could, or you could decide to take a family vacation, but then what ends up happening is you're just starting over. Where everyone else is ahead, you start back at square one.
Yeah, and I think you see that even at the NFL ranks, where someone gets injured preseason, like we saw with Le'Veon Bell, where he came out and he looked pretty rusty that 1 year. And he was like, yeah, I'll be there. There won't be a step missing, but then there definitely was. It was like a little bit of awkwardness. So I would imagine that gap's even larger in high school. Do you get like orange slices and stuff to make them feel comfortable, Matt?
No. I will say, though, if this year is nice, because as of right now, with the COVID protocols, we don't have all of the craziness that we did last year, where like some of the rules that people were putting into place just didn't make sense. Where, like, you could be in a blocking drill, but then you'd have to, if you took your helmet off, then you'd have to wear your mask. Like, you weren't just spitting all over the person a second ago with your helmet on.
Well, that's a good point. Do they have to wear masks while they're running?
No.
Oh, thank goodness.
Unless, now, because football is an outdoor sport, we've been able to get around that. But with some of the other sports, I think what's going to happen with this new variant is that there's going to be, if the positive cases increase, you could see schools having to go back to that. And my fears are that long term, you're always going to have, towards the end of football season, where schools are being in these difficult positions because the positive cases go up, because it's no longer the flu, it's now the COVID season. And so you're going to have more people getting sick with the positive cases, and it's going to cause schools to be either closing down or go into like the mask wearing mandates and things like that.
Yeah, I remember I took a lunch break once. It was like in the middle of the heat of the day, and I don't even know if it was summer or what, but they had a soccer game going on at one of the high school fields, and the kids were all wearing masks, and I thought, oh my gosh, how are you not dying? Like, just running all day in the heat, because like down here it's like 90 degrees or whatever. So,
well, and I don't know how you comfortably wear a mask and and do that kind of physical exertion, like in the heat.
You'd almost need a runner's mask. Like when I did the Big Ten 10K last year, they gave us like one of those neck sleeves. I don't know what the hell they're called. But that it was lightweight enough that I think you could technically run in that. I don't know if it gives you the protection that they would recommend. So they'd probably be frowned upon, but that would be the route I would go if I was playing. It's almost like an Under Armour type, like very lightweight. It's not as heavy as some of the Under Armours, because I know you might be thinking of Cold Gear or something up there in the north.
Well, that was like where my brain naturally gravitated to, is thinking like in the winter, you might wear like a mask just to cover your face while you're running to like prevent the cold. Like in the colder weather, I think it's almost easier to get around that, because you want to avoid being cold anyhow. So like you cover your face and you have that protection. But I think like in the middle, like now it's like you almost get that second heat wave towards the end of summer, where like the weather just gets scorching, and like it'll hit back in the 90s here, and you have a lot of the kids that they've just been in the air conditioning all summer that now they're sweating like crazy. It's like, how do you find that balance, you know?
And the air conditioning is a thing that is more of like a newer phenomenon. Like even up in Pennsylvania, like I didn't really know anyone that had air conditioning growing up that I remember. But now I feel like everyone has some sort of it. And so that probably would make a gigantic difference, like going in and out. Because even down here, some buildings are so cold that like you almost feel it immediately. And it almost like gives you a chest cold just walking in from like 90 degrees to 68 or whatever the ridiculous temperature they have it set at. So I could only imagine it would hurt some players, maybe the ones that are used to it more all day type stuff.
But one of the things that I have noticed, and I think the heat acclimation period definitely favors the kids that are able to participate in weightlifting programs and the summer like 7-on-7 stuff, because the more that you're out conditioning and playing in that type of heat, you just get used to it. So I mean, I'm like a little bit biased towards football, but I also think of like the multi-sport athlete kids that are playing summer baseball, that are playing in a summer basketball league. Those kids have not had any issues as far as handling the heat. And a lot of the kids that really struggle with it are the kids that they haven't gone anywhere, they haven't done anything, and more importantly, they're not eating anything before they come to practice, which is the big surprise.
Yeah, and that's something like now, even like growing up, I remember being outside all the time and just being forced to be inside for work for long stretches. Like just going outside now, sometimes it's just like miserable immediately. So I think it's just good for mental health, even if you're not an athlete, just to get outside sometimes and get used to it and try to make it a regular thing, because I think it's probably a good thing to do instead of just sitting inside all day. But
absolutely.
We'll probably be talking about some more fitness stuff on this show. I've been tinkering around with possibly opening it up some more to kind of keep myself motivated, since we talk about the 10K stuff each summer. Once that's over, it's done, so my motivation kind of wanes. But I know with like football stuff starting, you guys have 2 days next week, and we'll be checking in on that. But anything else you have for workout stuff? Any workout tips for people that are trying to get in shape?
I think the best thing is to do something. Just I know there's some people that they have to find like the perfect workout routine or regimen or the perfect running whatever. I don't think it matters. I think what matters more than anything is just starting, just getting going. And even if it's small or you start slow, because knowing that with my Achilles issues that I've had over the last couple of months, it's been frustrating getting back into running, knowing that my times were a lot faster. But it's just being okay with something is better than nothing and building back up to the faster times.
Yeah, because I feel like people use that just as an excuse. Like, I can't start today. My workout plan says I start on Mondays, Matt. And then before you know it, that Monday is like a Labor Day, and you're like, I might as well just take the whole week off because I missed Monday. and then you never start back up.
Absolutely. So it's better off that even if you do something light, or it doesn't have to be, I'm dedicating 3 hours of my day, because let's face it, most people don't have a solid 3 hours that they can dedicate to it. So, I mean, you find the time within what you can do, and even if you shave a little bit of time each day, that's worth it. It's better than nothing.
Well, that's why, like, if you start with a 5K or something small, because, like, that's only 3 miles. And that's, like, if you do, like, a 15-week plan, guess what? You're starting with, like, even less than a mile, probably, like, the first kilometer. That's not a long time to run. Like, you can do that in, like, 5 or 6 minutes. I mean, I guess if you're walking it. But, like, for the most part, and that's, like, a pretty slow pace. And if you can just build that stamina up, I think you'll do well. So, well, we'll be checking back in on that. Something that I want to try to bring up just as motivation for myself, too. And I know some other people listen to the show and also work out. So if you have anything you want to talk about or any tips you want to give, you can reach out to us. Go to southboundsports.com. But now let's get into the NFL stuff, Matt. That Hall of Fame game, boring. Dude, I was and I knew it was going to happen. And I want to see, because I've been complaining about the Steelers' extra game all year. And I know other people haven't been saying it, because, like, oh, Bill Cowher, he was there. That was great. He was down on the field. He gave some commentary. They said he was trying to call plays. He was, like, goofing around. So, the game wasn't that serious. They also did a good highlight on Mike Tomlin and his time with the Buccaneers. I don't know if you caught that. But they talked about how key he was there and how some of the players, like I think John Lynch was there talking about him, how much he meant to him as a player, and how they were very close in age, which I didn't even realize. So that was some of the takeaways I had from the game. Of course, Ben didn't play. Dak didn't play. I was kind of worried because of how easy the Cowboys seemed to move the ball down the field. And the Steelers kind of just went with that bend but don't break, which you really haven't seen from them with their aggressive game plan. They kind of just laid back and let them drive down the field and then miss some field goals. So it was like, oh, that worked out. And even if they would have made them, I don't know how many they missed or whatever, but it really wouldn't have mattered because the Steelers' offense wasn't doing anything. But what are your thoughts on the game before I get into some more of what I saw?
I kind of just thought in general, and taking it with a grain of salt, because it wasn't all of the it wasn't all the starters, and it wasn't all the people that you were anticipating, but I saw some of the components of Pittsburgh football that I enjoyed watching. It wasn't just the throw it up jump ball style that has kind of been customary for Pittsburgh over the last couple seasons, where if they're hitting it, the potential is to score 40, 50 points. But if they're missing, then you're looking at a snooze fest, 3-0 game. So I saw some of the consistency. I saw the use of motion that I think is going to be important to try to get some matchups, and I like that.
And I don't want people to read it too much into it, because I saw a lot of people hyping up Dobbs after that performance. The longer the game goes, and I know Dobbs looked pretty good, he's playing against their third, fourth string at that point. So you're playing with guys that are just trying to make the team. I did see some people have favorable opinions on Najee Harris. I would have liked to see a little bit more from him, but they played him a hell of a long time. It felt like hey, it's your first preseason game. Running backs usually don't have that long of a shelf life. To have him in for 2 or 3 quarters, I don't even remember how long he was in for, but he was in for a big chunk. So that kind of surprised me, and I almost wondered if they were like, hey, you need to get caught up to game speed now. And to me, that rings oh yeah, you weren't ready to just come right in and play. That's how it felt to me. But I did see some good things from him. So we'll see how it comes up this week, and I wonder if they're going to taper off his playing time each week. What do you think?
I think that's exactly what it is, and I think they wanted, knowing that it was kind of going to be a safer preseason game, that it was better to give him that higher pitch count, knowing that we want to get as many different looks, as many different things on film to be able to show it and teach it so that he can grow. Because let's face it, they didn't draft him in the first round to ride the pine. They drafted him in the first round to carry the mail. So he needs to hurry up and figure it out.
Yeah, and we'll see. I mean, I don't want to talk about the first preseason game that was very boring the entire show, but we'll see what happens in the next coming weeks. They're on Thursday again playing the Eagles, so by the time you hear this, they might be playing that night. But hopefully we'll see just some more consistency on offense and at least just moving the ball. Defense, I'm fine with the approach that they took, and I honestly think that it might help longer term if they do face injuries again, having something like that in their back pocket where they can string it out, keep things in front of them, don't give up big plays like we've seen them do, and get into it. Before we get into the Hall of Fame inductee stuff, what do you think of their contract situation? Like T.J. Watt's probably going to hold out if he's not for sure, and then Hayden wants to do a long-term deal to end up as a Steeler his whole career.
I have mixed feelings. I think T.J. Watt's done enough already in his career to warrant a contract extension and raise, but I worry that Pittsburgh's already a team that's pretty tight to the cap, and it feels like they're kind of waiting for Ben to retire to get some more cap breathing room. It's like, why? I don't think that they're in a position to tie him up, or to give that money up when they're about to get out from underneath some of that cap space.
And that's something
Ben's
where
contract.
I don't think they're going to even front load. Like, they couldn't even skip a year. Like, I think he's going to want money up front. And like you said, if you front load it, they didn't really have any room at all. So I'm not really sure what his plan is, unless he was hoping for just something more long-term like Hayden, which Hayden's another one. He's eating up a ton of cap room. What really do you do with an aging cornerback?
If he's playing consistently, I mean, I think for as consistently as he has been recently, I think depending on what the number looks like, I don't think that it's a bad idea, because God knows for how long we've been hunting for cornerbacks to hold the secondary, and if they're having a cohesive unit, I think that that's something important for as pass heavy as the league's getting.
Yeah, that's true. The only concern I have is his age, because like cornerbacks usually don't last very long in the league. But if you can get consistency and he's not going to take a huge chunk of the salary cap, I think you do it. Like, why not try to lock him in long term?
And maybe he's like those other good ones, like Deion Sanders or Charles Woodson, play till you're like 95 years old.
And that's a good point. So we'll see. And I mean, that can be our transition into the Hall of Fame inductees. I mean, Charles Woodson, great inductee. Happy to see him up there. Gave a little song to his mama. Did you see that? I don't know if you saw the clips. Peyton Manning was complaining about how much time he got. He was like saying how he only had 4 minutes or something. It's like, how much time are you wasting complaining about the time? So just get into your speech. I know he was like focused on Tom Brady being there and how they were rivals. But overall, like I said, I really liked how they did it in the game, where they brought in John Lynch and Bill Cowher and a couple of other guys. I can't remember who all they talked to, and kind of gave them like a little spotlight. There were so many from last year. I think there were 20. I think I have the stats up. I better bring it up. There were like 20 from last year, and then this year there were 8 more. And that's why they had to add the extra game. And like I said, I wonder how like that's going to affect the Steelers. Are they going to be more injury prone this year? There's another regular season game too, or potentially is it going to let some of these younger guys get more experience and possibly help them? I don't know. But that 2020 or 20 member class or 2020, and then the other 8 member class, like I think that's why they were just cutting down like their induction stuff just because they were so long. Did you see Alan Faneca come out with Hines Ward? Talk about being in shape. Alan Faneca looked like he could play wide receiver, and Hines Ward would have been the guard.
Well, they say that happens though when offensive linemen finally retire and they don't have to continue to put weight on. That the trend is offensive linemen, like at college and in the NFL, go the opposite direction, end up losing a bunch of weight. Where like the running backs and wide receiver, the skill guys, that they have to spend so much time trying to focus on getting faster and keeping weight down that they just let themselves go and get big.
I don't even think that just happens. I think it depends on the sport too. Because like linemen, when they're playing, they're not running. Like, let's be honest, they're all focused on just lifting weights, doing their thing. They're not running like 100-yard sprints, or like Jerry Rice used to run, he said, like 5 miles a day. That's not a lineman. Like, you're joking if you think that's it. Plus, they're so heavy that they have to feel miserable. So they're probably like, oh my gosh, I can't get out of bed. My knee hurts. Like, you have a lower sink. And then you're like, damn, I need to buy a new house because every time I bend over to wash my hands, my back is hurt. So like, man, I could just imagine that whenever the career's over, it's like they already had their midlife crisis whenever they leave the league, whether they're like 26 or whatever. So I feel like they're going out and they're like, you know what, I'm done. I can't do it anymore. I'm just going to actually start working out. And hey, you know what? I don't have to be so heavy. It feels better if I do run a little bit, where like, you're right. Any other athlete, I feel like they go the other way because like they're used to running. And I also wonder, like quarterbacks too, you normally see them, they're not running as much as any other position. Like they don't have to be like Tom Brady, for as in shape as he is. Like I don't think he would like triple in size. Maybe I'm wrong because I don't think he's running that much where he's like the metabolism shift is going to be so massive. Like I wonder with a guy like Mike Phelps, where when he came out of the Olympics, I was like, he's got to be massive, but I didn't really see it. So I'm like, man, he's still in shape. I wonder if he's still swimming, because you like something like that you would have to continuously do. Or
maybe he's just eating the Subway subs. But just they're low calorie, so maybe he's just doing that.
Yeah, there's a joke in there, but let's just go with, I don't know. When they reach an age, you would think that like you're going to be on TV. Like, doesn't Hines Ward still do the Notre Dame stuff? Like, do you not have time in your day? Maybe he's doing too much. Where Alan Faneca might just be laying back, relaxing. So I think that could be another factor too. But I've seen some guys look pretty bad. I think for the most part, though, I was glad Alan Faneca finally got in. I know we've been talking about that for a few years now. And even last year, like the class or whatever, it's just weird. Like whenever they don't get in, the class is so big. But then he finally gets put in with like the Peyton Manning class and like Charles Woodson. Like it's a good thing. Another one, Calvin Johnson. What do you think about his beef with the Lions?
It's just a weird situation. Like, I don't know.
Well, for people that don't know, he said that they owed him, I think I saw the number was like $150,000, but he retired early. So, like, I don't know how much of that, like, did they just not pay him? Like, I don't know the exact details who's at fault here, but, like, if you retire, like, that's it. So they had reached out to him, and I think they offered him, like, hey, why don't you just come out, speak on behalf of the team? We'll give you 50 grand if you do it for 3 years. That's why I think the number was 150. Because I think that was the offer I saw, where they're like, come out, we'll just give you 50 grand. You come out to us for whatever, we'll fly you out here. You'll do everything. Just give a couple public speeches, which most players already do anyway. So, like, I think at this point, he's only hurting his own legacy. Because, like, where else is he going to go? Like, is Georgia Tech going to have him hanging out around? Because I know some players go back to their college or whatever. But that was the one thing. It's almost like, where are you going to go with this? Like, you're only hurting yourself. Like, same with Barry Sanders. For as much as I love Barry Sanders, he kind of came around back with the Lions and stuff. Now he's, like, in some commercials and things. But people forget you within 10 years if you're not hanging around. Like, they're not going to forget Peyton Manning. He's on TV making jokes about his big forehead, like throwing himself in there with Tom Brady. He's like connecting himself in at like players and even fans' minds still. Where now, whenever they just saw that, so when they watch Tom Brady, the commentators are going to bring up Peyton Manning. Like, Peyton Manning has like a long-term plan to stay relevant. Him and Eli Manning are calling games from their phones for like one of the networks or something he said they were going to be doing. Like Calvin Johnson, like, you're just pushing yourself away from the league. Like, yeah, you're in the Hall of Fame, but what other opportunities are going to have for yourself? Like, you're not going to have endorsement deals. Maybe he's well off with money. I mean, he made a ton in the NFL, but at some point I would think your legacy would be a little bit more important to some of these guys. I think they're just like, they don't think about it, and I wonder if they regret it down the line.
Well, I almost wonder for someone like him, and I don't know if these rumors are true, but I had heard at one point like the physicality was wearing on him, which is why he retired prematurely. And it makes sense because he was pretty much a one-man show with Detroit. But I always thought, like, when he announced his retirement, I always thought, like, if you only have like a year left on your contract, why do you not just try to get out of Detroit? Like, why renew with the Lions knowing that you're probably not winning?
And that's where I was like, because you see guys push themselves out all the time. Like Le'Veon Bell wanted out. Guess what? He got out. Like Antonio Brown, like you can just act like a big jerk. And I know that's not Calvin Johnson, but maybe just say like, hey, I'm too beat up. Like you can take some days off. You can be injured without really being injured. Like I know they're not going to push you out there if they're paying you that much money, and then just don't resign. But I don't know. That's what I'm almost wondering where, like, it's almost like the Mike Leach thing with Texas Tech. Mike Leach keeps calling out Texas Tech, pay me. But guess what? He's also still working in football and getting paid other ways. So everyone still knows who Mike Leach is. Like with Calvin Johnson, like him complaining about the Lions and then disappearing. Like he's not going to get that fan outrage on his side to like get some paid. I just don't understand. And at that point, I would think that you'd want to be like brought back and remembered. Like he can't come back to any other team. Like it's not like the Falcons can be like, hey, we're honoring Calvin Johnson today. And fans will be like, yeah, great. And he'd be like, you might know him because he played at Georgia Tech. And then everyone's like, oh, yeah, I guess. Well, like, why is he here at the Falcons? Like, they're not going to care. So maybe he doesn't want that. But I wonder if some of those players do regret it. Because, like, you turn on the TV and you see, like, a lot of guys that are in the Hall of Fame. They're all over the TV. They're all doing things. They're bringing him in, just getting commentary. And I know that that's good visibility, and I know they get paid for those appearances. So if you shoot the team down, you got to be shooting yourself in the foot too. So that's my last thing for the Hall of Fame inductees. I can go down the list and see what other ones stood out to me. But the big Steeler ones we talked about, we got in, I think, for the most part. I don't know if I missed anybody. Oh, there was one other one. Did you see, was it Isaac Bruce that came out and was just like, he was naming other wide receivers that were taking after him. And he was like, yeah, they had great careers. Like, I guess he said someone called him. Like, that's how petty his, like, speech was. Where he came out and was like, yeah, a team called me before the draft and was like, yeah, you're not this guy or this guy, so you're not going to be taken. It's, like, just so weird. Like, why would a team even do that, number one? Because, like, yeah, we don't care about you. And I'm going to name two other guys. So then he ended up... Because I was thinking, like, oh, did he not get drafted? Because, like, I was so confused during the speech or whatever. So then I'm, like, looking up, like, oh, what happened here? Like, did he not get drafted? I would never have guessed that. And then they're like, no, he was a second-round pick. And I'm like, well, who are these other two guys he named? Because obviously that was, like, a slight at them, like, haha, you're supposed to be better than me. He was taken before them in the draft. So it's like, sometimes your Hall of Fame, like, if you're going to have that mentality, you got to be so petty, Matt, that you're like, those guys taken after me in the second or third round, like, I got to be better than them. Like, I got to prove my value. Like, so whatever guy, and he's like, he said that he prayed that person was still alive for when he got inducted so that he could witness him trash talk him or whatever, basically. Could you imagine, like, having some guy, he didn't even name him, but, like, that scout or whatever was probably like, hey, they're talking about me. I would own it. I'd be like, yeah, I thought, and then he could even come out and just say, yeah, I thought he'd be better. And Isaac Bruce could never, like, he would, I'm trying to see if anyone, I think that's who it was, right? So, like, that was, like, the one thing, it was like, his phrase was, how you like me now? He, like, did something. I'm trying to think where this says. Oh, this crap's probably going to start playing some music. let's see, he said this is coming from the heart, and he said it was a former scout that doubted him shortly before entering the NFL. Bert Emanuel, which I remember Bert Emanuel, and then Ryan Yarborough. So I don't know Ryan Yarborough, but Bert Emanuel, he played like in '98. So I remember him from like Madden '99, like that time frame. Like I was always playing video game football, but he played for the Falcons, and he played for
Tampa Bay.
Tampa Bay, yeah. So yeah, because Tampa Bay is the one where I remember him being on that team, because they had a pretty good team in Madden, the one that eventually ended up winning the Super Bowl. But yeah, it's just crazy that you would come out and your entire speech you're just like, yo, I'm going to tear these guys down. And you know that he's like, that scout has so much control over his mind that like he said in 1994, so how many years is that? Like 30 years? Almost 20, like 7 years. So if I was that scout, I would just call ESPN and say, hey, I was a scout that talked trash on Isaac Bruce. Can you give me a little clip here? And then I would just be like, yeah, I mean, it's good that he got in, but I still think that he could have been better. Then, you know that would eat him up, man.
Just to the grave. Just like, I hate him.
He would probably put him on the grave. He'd probably write his name down. It'd be in the obituary. But it's like, man, I guess that's what you have to have. So if you're an athlete, try to find someone that's putting you down. It doesn't even matter if the slams make sense. Like, you're predicted to be better than those guys, but you're going to talk trash on them anyway during your speech. So it doesn't even matter. I don't know. So I loved it. And a lot of people were like, oh, that was crazy. Like, I can't believe he went after that guy. But I'm like, dude, that's like a psycho mentality. Like, that'd be like if, who's like the guy from like Amazon, like Jeff Bezos, if he was like talking trash on like some other Amazon employee that wasn't as good as him. Like, yeah, every day, like, I just think like, oh man, I'm so glad I'm not that guy. Like, meanwhile, he's like trying to pilot his own spaceship to go into space and stuff. And the other guy's probably like, why me? Why are you mad at me? I didn't do anything. So I'd be like, yeah, I played in the NFL for a pretty good career. That's what even the one writer was like, I looked them up. They had like pretty good stats. I don't know why you'd be so angry at those guys. Like, I could see if they were like taking like Aaron Rodgers, like if he came out and gave a speech about like how he was better than Alex Smith, because like Alex Smith was taken first and then he fell all the way like almost out of the first round. That's a guy I could see. But just like talking trash on other wide receivers, like, why? But I don't want to talk about it anymore. I know that because Matt, that hit home for me, because I could see myself being like petty, like, you know what? You know what? Are you serious? You think you're better than me?
No. What I envision with that though is he's just sitting at his desk at home and he's like, I have to write this speech for the Hall of Fame.
Matt, he wasn't sitting down writing that. He had that in his head for 30 years. Well,
that's what I'm saying. Like, you're sitting there and you're like, this is the moment that I've been waiting for. Jerry, I'm coming at you. And just
you're like, because you have to be like, I wonder if he thought about him before games, like, oh my gosh, like I just dropped that pass. What the hell? So and so is right. I'm not good. I'm not going to be in the league for long. So like, I could only imagine, like, at some point, like, that obsession has to die, because like you said, like, at some point you have to also sit down and like plan to write it out. And I wonder if he had other drafts that didn't include him. He's like, nah, I gotta go with this one.
That maybe he had a different draft, and then at the last minute was like, I'm going for it.
Well, he's going like the opposite direction. Because like I had just said a couple weeks ago, Tom Brady, he's out there cracking jokes at the White House. Peyton Manning comes out, he's cracking jokes. And like, I feel like they're like preparing for like their post career, where they're going to be like in the booth some weeks telling jokes and stuff like that. Isaac Bruce is like, no, I'm torching everything. I'm going to do like the same exact thing I talked with Calvin Johnson. I'm going to talk trash on a bunch of other NFL vets and like, how you like me now. And then that's it. No one will ever hear from me again. But at least I'll have that Hall of Fame speech. So look that up. Watch some of these if you want to see them. But that's all I had for Hall of Fame stuff.
The last thing for the Hall of Fame that I had was, I was just really happy that Polamalu got in, because when I look at, all-time great players, that sometimes I feel like when it comes to Hall of Fame people, a lot of people just get pushed in because of a name, because of like random reasons that it's like, oh, well, they have to be a Hall of Fame. Like, I feel like if you're, as a coach, when you're like looking at what type of player would I want to have, Polamalu was exactly what you wanted. Like, he was great in the locker room. You could do all kinds of stuff with him as far as like positioning him around the field. I mean, he covered so much that he allowed the defense to be as good as what they were. And the greatest compliment is that look at how poorly the defense played after he retired. I mean, they really weren't even remotely close to being the same after he left. And I think that just shows the impact that he had on their defense.
Yeah, and I feel like, I know I forgot Polamalu, but I know we already talked about him a few times with this when it was announced, because I think Bill Nunn, too, was in. I don't know if there's any other Steelers I'm missing. I was just going by the ones that I know that stood out that I remembered watching some of the clips, because I just watched, the NFL had like, they were doing their tweets. So if you go on their even their website, they might have them just nested in there, and you can just watch the little clips. So those were the ones that stood out to me. But Polamalu, he was talking about some of the other Steelers that really helped him learn the defense. And I think having that consistency helped Pittsburgh. And I think it still kind of helps to this day, where really, if the defense can keep that consistency with Tomlin, and let's get focused on that and have that where you have these guys that are vets sticking around, teaching these younger guys, then maybe like that mentality is going to stay. Because I did see something where they were talking about like how the Steelers never have like a season where they tank. And I think that's just because of the defensive consistency. So like other franchises where they're like constantly blowing everything up, you have to learn from these other guys and keep it going, almost like a system. And I don't know if that's just because keeping head coaches or being good with player management, where you're cycling in, like we talked about Joe Hayden, like let's sign him for a long-term deal and have him teach like these younger guys, and then we can kind of cycle them through, maybe keep another one or two around, and just have those veteran leaders on defense that seem like they're there forever until they betray and go to the Patriots, right?
Wow, not petty at all.
I told you, the Isaac Bruce thing, dude. Hit home for me. I was crazy that I almost forgot to bring it up. Should have been my topic. How you like me now? So I should have named the show. Our fantasy football. So we're off the Hall of Fame stuff. I know we're getting right into some of the biggest things. My fantasy football stuff for this year, and I think you really got to be careful, is like guys coming back from injury. Because like I had Christian McCaffrey last year, and I saw some drafts where they were saying, oh, he's the number one running back again. He's going to be healthy. Number one, how the hell do you know that? And number two, what's their quarterback situation? Like, you can't look at that Panthers team and say, consistency, McCaffrey's the number one guy. So if that's your draft board, because I saw countless draft boards where McCaffrey's number one, I'll be saying it this year, like I'm not drafting him again. Unless I get super drunk and accidentally bid like over for him, like that's not going to happen, because I like guys that don't get injured. And if they do get injured, I like to see them jump out of a pool like David Johnson, so that I know that they're back to being healed. Remember when he did that? He had like his knee injury or whatever. And even then, he had already won me 2 championships back to back. So I was just kind of taking a flyer on him, because if he would have won 3 in a row, then that man is amazing, and I would have done anything to have him on the show. Maybe I should try to get him on the show. Say, hey, remember when you won me those 2 fantasy championships? He'll say, no, I didn't know that. But Christian McCaffrey, that's the one thing that my biggest point coming in is, if you're looking for a high value guy, and for those that haven't listened to the show in the past, we do an auction draft for our league. And so you can kind of pick and choose who you want. If you want someone, you can get them. Like there's no way, like, because eventually someone's going to stop bidding against you because they don't want to waste all their money. But I've found that getting a guy like that, a bell cow that you can get early on, has been very beneficial, especially if they're putting up points like Travis Kelce, like where he's getting so many more points than any other tight end. It's better to spend a little bit more on him knowing that he's going to give you that return value compared to other positions. And if it ends up costing you the bank and then the rest of your team, because that's the only thing is you have to value it against what other guys can I backfill. If you spend like $70-$80 on him and he's a tight end, you could be in a world of hurt. But running back's one where you can always go high. You just have to hope that they don't get injured. And so, like, another one I saw, Ezekiel Elliott, people were kind of down on him, but his quarterback was hurt. So his quarterback's coming back. That's not, really on him. So that's another guy where I think if he starts to go low, maybe that's the guy you take. So that's my tip for this week. Christian McCaffrey, maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe he'll come out and be awesome again. But remember, new coach. He didn't really play last year. He had some great games when he did. But they were going through their quarterback stuff again, so who really knows what the hell they're doing. But I'm not sold on him. What do you think going into the pre-planning stages of fantasy football, Matt?
Well, he was one that stood out early that I thought was going to go really high. And the other one that I think, especially like in the Pittsburgh area, that's going to be high is Najee Harris. And I wouldn't be surprised in our own league if he doesn't go for $70, if not more.
I think that would be crazy. To bet on a rookie where you have a team that couldn't run the ball for shit, what has changed?
But in a PPR league,
who knows if he can catch? That was one of the knocks on him.
That was, but you know what Pittsburgh's going to do? They're going to throw him some screen passes
until he drops 3, and then he'll never see a screen pass again. And then you're sitting there week 4, and you're like, "Why does my team suck? Why?" And then you're like, and I just send you a screenshot of your team values, and you're like, "Oh yeah, I remember now. I spent $80 on Najee Harris." You don't get the ball. They can't run behind that line. Ben Roethlisberger's taking sacks. He's injured. Mason Rudolph's the quarterback now. He just got hit in the head with the helmet, so he's out. Then you're like, "Oh, the season could go down. The season could get bad really fast with the quarterback situation and stuff." So like that's the one thing where if you're really betting on him, I don't think you go high. I think you take a flyer if you can get him for maybe $30 or $40. I could see that. But you're right. Some people just see the Steelers and they're like, "I'm going to bid him up."
Well, I think in situations where looking at how they're going to use him, they're using him in the run. They're already talking about using him as a 3-down back. They're willing to give him the carries. I think there's a high upside to him. However, if it's going to cost you, like if you're in an auction style league like ours, I think you have to weigh, is it worth, do you have a good keeper, or do you have enough that you can account for if he doesn't pan out?
And that's where, with the Steelers, well, see, normally if you take a team, like I had McCaffrey, when he gets injured, you pick up his backup. He does fairly well for you. And then I think he was getting injured too. I can't remember. It was a bad year last year for some of that stuff. And so if you're going through and looking at that, it's like, all right, well, where do I go from here with the team? But with the Steelers, you don't get Najee Harris. It's like, is the backup even going to be decent? Like, it's not like James Conner's there where you're like, all right. Because, a lot of people were drafting Conner high too, though, and he never really put it over the top. That's my thing. I don't know. I'm just not sold on him. But I do have a super sleeper, my man Antonio Brown, because people are gonna laugh at this, but I'll say this: Antonio Brown last year, he had some issues where he didn't play like the first couple weeks, and then people were like, "Oh, they didn't really write him off." But his last 3 weeks last year, Matt, before they obviously went on the run to win a Super Bowl, where he was a key part of that, 15, 9, 25. So he didn't play till week 9, I think. And then he was on limited snaps where he was only seeing 5 targets, 3 targets, 5, 7. So then he started to get more targets. And when he started to get more targets, then in a PPR league, because are these even PPR? No, they're not. So no, there's no way they are, because that 25-point game, he had 11 catches or whatever. So he'd have more, I think. This doesn't say. I'm on CBS, so maybe I'm wrong. But that's the one thing where, like, hey, if you're going to be a guy that's just eating targets, like that's a great take if you can get him cheap, because I think a lot of people forget about him. But that's my sleeper pick for the year. I picked him up last year. I think I got him for super cheap. He might up even just being my keeper because I don't really care. And I'm not going to keep McCaffrey for a very high value. And so if you can keep a guy like that and you're like, hey, I saw what he did in the playoffs and at the end of the year, and if it doesn't take, who cares? High upside guy for $1 or whatever. Depends on how much I have him for. I don't even know. Wonder if I can check that. But do you have any sleepers that you're looking for this year? Or you're going to keep it to the chest? You're not going to tell me.
No, I don't really have any sleepers because a lot of it depends on how the rest of the league goes. I mean, if you have a lot of these guys that come out of the gate really hot, then like trying to think, like a McCaffrey, if you don't claim him, he's going to go really high. So how much do you really want to spend in an auction style league? I think it's different if you're looking at some of the serpentine style drafts where like you don't have to factor in, I got to field an entire team with an auction, like in our league where you have a value amount. So you have to look at, like, for your team, how much are you willing to pay? And I think the consistent model seems to be if you have a running back that can catch out of the backfield, if you can have some receivers that can get you some points, you can make a run in the playoffs if you have the right people. And now whether you go tight ends or you go receivers, it seems like in a PPR league, the running backs are going to be the ones that are going to help you because they're going to get those goal line carries, and if they're catching the passes out of the backfield, that's extra points that are just low fruit hanging.
And that's the one thing when I'm looking at this, I would say that with the guys, just don't panic. Because, like, I think I've seen it happen where people are like, like I usually know who I want to get. And then my thing goes like this, like I'm like, all right, I want David Johnson. I don't care how high he gets. That's going to be my guy. And that year he went off, like that just ended up being a miracle pick for me. Because like he got super hot. And then like you were saying, if you have a guy like that, you know he's going to go high. I ended up keeping him. And I almost didn't because I'm like, there goes my whole salary. And then I'm like, well, what the hell? I spent my whole salary last year and I won. So let's just go with it and see what happens. So I think if you can get a guy, and maybe you don't have keepers, but if there's a guy that you know consistently, if you're doing like the serpentine draft, like Matt said, I think that's where people usually really panic because they're like, oh crap, like every running back's gone. I have to reach and get a guy I don't want, where sometimes getting a good quarterback can take that burden right off your team. Like the 1 year, I think I picked that Matt Ryan. He went off that year and I got him for like $2 or something because I didn't panic. Because everyone was taking quarterbacks, and I thought, oh, what the heck? Who am I going to get? Because I think I really wanted either Ben or my man Tom Brady or something, and I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to take Matt Ryan and get him for $2 and see what happens. And then I picked like someone else that was fairly decent, which is usually my nightmare. I'm like, oh, I'll get Matt Ryan and then Phillip Rivers, and then I won't know who to play. So then my whole year is just consistently playing the wrong guy and being down about yourself. like, oh, what am I doing? So that's the same with tight ends. So normally, if you get a guy, and I know we have a flex or whatever, but I try to get guys that I know, like, I'm going to play no matter what. Like Christian McCaffrey, unless you're hurt, you're going to play, and hopefully, if you get injured, like, that's it. So sometimes it's just the breaks. But that's all I had for fantasy football. You got anything else to end it?
No, I mean, with the way knowing the people in your draft helps too. Because the early years of our draft, it was really easy to steal 2 decent tight ends that you could use, one as your flex and one as your regular tight end. But as your league, if you're in a league that evolves and people are in it longer term and kind of see some of those trends, it may get tougher to find the guys that you want. And I think ultimately, if you have maybe 5 guys, 5 or 6 players that you're looking at and you're going, all right, these are the guys that I have to have on my team. That if you end up with 3 of them, you could have a good year. I think that's a really safe way of drafting, is saying these are the guys that you have to have. Because in an auction style league, you can also go that side that you're seeing, like Saquon Barkley goes for 80, and then Tom Brady goes for a really high amount, and Gronk goes for a high amount. And right off the bat, like those first 4 or 5 picks go for really high, and you're like, I'm not spending on that. I'm going to wait till later and clean up with those mid rounds. And then by the time it hits mid round, you're looking around, you're going, well, there's no one there. I can't have anyone to pick up. So you end up with a bunch of scabs that you can pick up really easy and outbid everyone for, but they're not getting you any points and they're not getting you any wins. So I think you got to find those guys that you feel confident that it's going to get you the points. And like you said, if you get 2 or 3 that can carry the mail for you week to week, you have a shot at getting to the title.
Well, you just got to kind of do your research. Like the one year I picked up like a tight end from the Browns or something. I can't remember, but I had read a story about how the quarterback had requested him to be his roommate at training camp. And I thought, oh, that's a lock. Like he's going to be in a PPR. That's the safety valve. You don't ask the tight end to be your roommate if you're not good friends with them. And so then he was like, he wasn't like quite at Kelsey level. I forget who that even was. I think it was the Browns tight end. I can't remember now. But I'm like, nice quarterback doing that, picking him up. I know we talked about him on the show, so it had to be within the past 3 years. But that's the one thing too. Like, just do a little bit of research. Like, look at targets. If the guy's not getting any targets, then you know oh, that's not going to go well for me. And if he drops 70% of his balls, like Devontae Adams used to do, like I had him once, and I'm like, I regretted it. And now he's good, and I still couldn't take that bid on him. Like last year, I had a chance to get him, and I'm like, I just can't trust him. I know if I get him, I'll just regret it the entire year. I don't care if he's the highest receiver by all, like the entire year, and he's like the greatest value, and that team wins a championship. I'm like, I can't get him. So, but that's all I have. We'll be getting some more on that. Maybe we'll go position by position. I know we usually do that each year, but because like with an auction draft, like it doesn't matter what tips we give on this show. Even if everyone in the league listens and tries to steal them, it goes so fast you'll never know. So I got some secrets I keep up here. My keeper, ESPN doesn't tell me how much they were worth, so I don't know. Maybe I'll bring that in next week if I remember. But get into college football now. Bobby Bowden passed away, Matt, so go ahead. You can give your tribute to him. What are you laughing at?
Well, very rarely, if ever, that I can think of where a celebrity passed away, and I've had any kind of reaction to it. And I was just talking about this. I think it was earlier today or yesterday, where I said it's actually affecting me a lot more than I'd realized, because when you look back at the effect that Bowden has had, and on the players, on college football, on everything, he's left a lasting impression. And honestly, he's one of the reasons why I follow Florida State to begin with, because he was one of the first people to reach out and get away from some of the he wasn't afraid to try something different to try to get his teams to win. And he was always one to put some of the trick plays in, and when you watch some of his teams play, they always played great defense. They always had high-powered offenses, and from week to week, whether I was like video recording it and trying to watch it later or whatever, there was always a good game, and he was always competitive. And part of the way that I look at how to develop the kids that I coach, I look at some of the leadership stuff that he was able to do over his career, and without knowing it, he influenced the way that I've grown as a coach, because I looked up to the way that he handled things and ran his programs. And the biggest thing that I learned from was don't throw kids under the bus. Like, give them a second chance, because a lot of them need it. And I think that it's important that he would shoulder a lot of the blame when there were some of the scandals and different things under his tenure. But, when you look a little bit deeper and you think, well, if that was my kids, or if that was someone that was close to me that was involved in that, where you're in that high-profile situation, it's really easy for someone like him to go, that idiot. What the hell's wrong with him? Like, and just cut him from the team. But he was always one to protect those guys. And I think that you don't have a lot of people like that. And to go from some of his other programs, it wasn't like he stepped into a program that was already built. He built Florida State into what it is now, and the recognizable brand. And I don't know that you'll ever see that again from another program where he takes it to the levels that he was able to achieve it. And it hasn't been done even with the success that Saban has done recently.
And his legacy is so big that even just looking back, he stayed at a school. He didn't jump around. Like Nick Saban couldn't get it done at Michigan State. I know Bobby was at West Virginia. And he did well for them. And then he ended up going to Florida State. But he took the Florida State job. And I know a lot of people, I sent you a joke thing about him leaving West Virginia. Florida State wasn't good. They were like a girls' school. He built them up, so he was going there to make his legacy, and he stayed there. That never happens before. Now Nick Saban, everyone remembers him, but they don't remember that he had tried at Michigan State, couldn't get over the hump, couldn't beat really Michigan or Ohio State. Then he goes to LSU, gets one championship. Then his last game, they lost to Iowa in the Outback Bowl or whatever. I think that was his last game at LSU, and then he jumps to the NFL, and then he doesn't succeed there. Revisionists are going back and they're always saying I think if he had more time, he'd be the same coach he is now. It's no. He's winning now because he's landing the number one recruiting class 13 years in a row. Are you kidding me? The first year they lost to Louisiana Monroe or someone like that. You're not just coming in and being dominant first year at Alabama. You should never lose to them. That's whenever Michigan fans are running Lloyd Carr out after they lost to App State. That's when you know your career is over. Nick Saban's doing that the first year he's there. So I think that also taints the legacy and stuff like that. But for Bobby Bowden, you can't knock him. He stayed there the entire time. The one thing that I don't really like is that he gets thrown in with Joe Paterno after all their scandals. Because immediately Bobby Bowden dies and it's oh, why am I seeing all these Joe Paterno articles again? It's people have been waiting. They're oh, Bobby Bowden's sick? Better write up my Joe Paterno article and get that ready to go. It's come on, are you serious? And even I searched it before the show just to see if there was anything else. The first picture is him hugging, or Joe Paterno hugging him. It's why is that on here? Penn Live. And so it's all right, I get it. You search one, you can't have it without the other because they both kind of built programs from nothing. But it's just something where you lionize a coach. You never know what can happen, but at least recognize him for what he did as a football coach. So,
and I know that for Bowden, he grew up in Alabama, and at one point had an opportunity to coach Alabama, and by that time he had kind of built Florida State up and was on the rise with them, and decided to stay with the program. Where I think other coaches would have taken more money and more in the bigger programs, and he stayed with Florida State and built them in. And honestly, not just him building Florida State, but building the ACC into a conference that is more recognizable, because through his string of top 5 finishes that hasn't been touched, he was single-handedly carrying the ACC.
Well, that's something I was going to bring up, but I did want to mention, when they were talking about the Alabama stuff, they were having a rough time in the 90s through the early 2000s, where they were having multiple losing records, a 1-12 season, 4-7, you're talking about that. Alabama's had some horrendous seasons where they haven't even won a game. Throughout their history. Michigan's worst season has been the Rich Rod year, where they had 3 games, until last year, where the shortened season they got 2 wins, which if they played those cupcakes they would at least had 4. But Alabama, for all as much success as they had and how many wins they have and stuff, they've had some seasons where they've tanked. So Alabama desperately trying to get Bobby Bowden would have been a dramatic shift. And then it took them a while to get Nick Saban and have that consistency. They haven't always had it. So that's something that you get one coach that lands it, and that's kind of what Florida State had, and now they're kind of going through their own thing. Luckily, they did get a championship with Jimbo Fisher, because otherwise it'd be one of the daunted schools like what Duke's looking at with Coach K. You lose your legendary coach, everyone's pumped, and they're like, oh, yeah, it's going to be good. It's going to be good. It's going to be good, right? Come on. Please tell me it's going to be good. Because in 3 years, that team could lose all of its luster. And I think that's when you see, if they start losing, are they going to keep getting all these high recruits? Because that's when you have to know, okay, the bagmen that have been rumored there, they're real. Because, you're not going there for Coach K anymore. You're not going there for whatever. At some point, it's all right, how much is the legendary coach worth at that one school? But that was my last topic I was going to ask you. What do you think Bobby would have wanted for Florida State with the conference stinks? Because there's been rumors they reached out to the SEC trying to get desperate, even though they shot it down and the SEC kind of shot it down.
Well, one of the things that I saw with him, and even as Florida State was on the rise, the way he built his program was he was willing to play anyone, anywhere.
Well, they were independent for a while, too.
Right.
They didn't join the ACC till 91 or 90, right?
Yes.
Or somewhere around
there. And so when you look at when they were playing some of those individual games, they never shied away from Miami when Miami was the U, and we're actually playing for national championships instead of talking about it. They never shied away from Notre Dame when Notre Dame was
there.
was same boat, was actually playing for championships instead of talking about and losing by 60. They played all of those tough games. And I think there's something to be said for not shying away from competition. I think he probably would have wanted to get into the SEC if the opportunity was there. But if not, you're still playing Florida, that crossover game in the SEC every year. You're still playing that competitive non-conference. So I think it would still be okay, because you're still having that opportunity to play some of those higher level programs.
And so, as I've seen more and more rumors come up, I didn't want to spend another show talking about conference realignment the entire time, but I think that a lot of teams right now, they can't get desperate. Because, to me, I still don't think Florida State and Clemson going to the SEC, it doesn't make sense. Because, what do you get out of that other than more money? Florida State's been struggling recently. You really think a team that's struggling jumping into a conference that's better is going to help? You might be locked into 3-win, 4-win seasons for another decade then, until you can rebuild, because you're not going to be able to recruit that stuff. And then, on top of that, we don't know what's going to happen with the playoffs and stuff. They have a much easier path, though, if they stay with the ACC.
I think it's different in a transfer portal era, and I know I've kind of beat on it for a couple shows now, but I think that with the availability of the player image being passed, and players being allowed to monetize themselves, and also being able to transfer, I think there's a lot of positives of being there. However, the cynical side that from you comes from the business model looking at some of this. You're right. Adding Clemson does nothing for the South Carolina market. It does nothing from the Florida market. They're already drawing those in. So unless the higher ups at the SEC are looking to try to collapse the NCAA as a whole, or to try to monopolize the playoffs, to go that route and just have a monopoly on the playoffs, there really isn't that extra interest in it, because with adding Texas and adding Oklahoma's been close to competing for that you may be that you're really not, you're almost solidifying 2 or 3 positions in that playoff that have been there for the last couple years.
Well, that's why I would say wait. See how the Oklahoma and Texas thing plays out. Because right now, it's a 14 playoff. Clemson's been making it every year, and when the years that they didn't, Florida State made it. So, if Florida State wants to make the playoff, the easiest path for them is to just beat Clemson. And then you're most likely in. And then, if you jump to the SEC, you're taking your Clemson playoff game and that's now becoming the SEC championship game. So you're out. Like, I don't think if they stay at 4 teams, I don't think they're going to put a rematch in the playoffs. So, like, getting Oklahoma playing Alabama for the SEC championship, if that's how the divisions shake out, Oklahoma loses, guess what? They're not going to be the 4th team in. People aren't going to want to see that rematch. That's why I don't understand why they would make that jump unless they were just really worried Texas leaving would destroy the Big 12. Even though I would argue, why not add BYU? Like, you lose Texas. Texas hasn't been Texas for a long time. Add a team with a national fan base. You might not make enough money off the top, but guess what? You win a couple championships. Now everyone's loving Clemson, and they pretend like the 50 years before never happened. They think Clemson's just like this all-time powerhouse when, guess what? They weren't. So if you jump into the SEC and you're not winning championships, people are going to forget all about little old Clemson. They're going to be like, oh, you might be in the playoffs every once in a while. Now, if they expand the playoffs, because I still think my theory is that they're preparing. I'm not as cynical as others where they think it's going to be one big conference, because I think that that's dumb. Like, the fastest way to kill college football is to just try to make a 32-team conference that's mainly in the Southeast and think people are going to pay attention. Like, you're taking a sport where anyone can say, hey, Saturday night I'm at the bar, I see this team's undefeated, I'm gonna tune in. People aren't going to tune in for a 4-loss Clemson playing a 5-loss Texas in December. They're just not, because they're going to be like, why the hell am I watching this? Both these teams suck. So, like, you got to be careful with your market. That's why I think, like, adding Florida State and Clemson, like, your top dogs right now, the ACC will give you more money. They already did it one time. Like, that's how desperate they are. And if you can get Notre Dame in there, stay there. And if it's really about the money, call up the Big Ten and try to get into that rival market. That's more on the business side of things. Like, hey, SEC offered us this, and the Big Ten Network, it needs some teams in the South. We have our buddy Miami, which Miami's been getting, they've been getting the better NIL deals, other than, like, you hear the rumored ones at Alabama, like, oh, this guy's making this much money. How do you know that's just not a booster paying that guy? Like, Miami's landing gyms, MMA gyms. He just landed a sponsorship from the Florida Panthers, the NHL hockey team. It's sponsoring their quarterback position. Like, that's outrageous. And they're already in a hot market. That's why my last thing for the show is everyone's talking about how Miami is going to be a team left out no matter what. You are nuts. Miami could just go independent and blow it up and start having all these Florida businesses in Miami or whatever just paying their players, and they could be top dog. Because, like, even if the SEC is like, oh, we're going to drop out and do our own little playoff, I'm telling you, there's how many other states out there that they're just going to pick up, and I think more people would watch. I think that would be a big mistake by the SEC to just be that focused. Because it's kind of like whenever we talk about, hey, why is, like, this arena football thing that's really focused only in a couple states, why is no one watching? If you can't drive to a game, you're not going to watch. Someone in California is not going to watch the SEC football, I'm sorry. And they haven't been. Like, only, like, whatever diehard football fans will watch, but they're most likely going to watch, like, USC. Like, the SEC would have to get all of those other teams, and I think that's where you really look at it, and you're like, wait, why are there 2 teams in Mississippi again? Why are there, like, all these other teams that don't get any ratings? Like, are they going to kick them out? Like, it would make sense for Florida State to just start over with, like, a couple of the other bigger schools instead of just jumping in the SEC. My only thought is they're hoping for a 16-team playoff, like I said, and it goes like the NCAA tournament route where the SEC gets, like, 6 bids, the Big Ten or whatever gets, like, 4, another conference gets 3, and then the rest of the conferences each get 1 or whatever. I don't know the math. However many conferences are left. And then the SEC just thinks, like, all right, now we have 6 chances. That's the only thing that they have to be thinking, is that they know the 12-team playoff is coming, and they're trying to monopolize all those bids with teams that have, like, 3 or 4 losses. But who knows? Might not work out.
But I'm thinking that they're already in a 4-team format. They've had a couple years where they've been able to almost push for 3 of the 4 seeds to try to beat. But
they've only had, like, 2 teams in, like, what, once or twice?
You're right. But through most of the year, they haven't aligned in a way where they're able to,
Matt,
to strong arm it.
But what's happening is the TV ratings are tanking. That's what I'm saying. It's a business deal. Like, as much as ESPN's going to pay them for their regular season, I don't think they're going to stuff a 14 playoff because they know people aren't going to watch. Like I said, they'd try to do everything they can to get out of those rematches. Like, they put Notre Dame in there because I'm trying to look and see. Like, Notre Dame was in twice. That stole some of the other bids. But the one year was Alabama losing. But they lost to Auburn, right? And they weren't in the championship game even. That was the year they got 2 teams in. And then, like, that happened one time. And, like, I really don't think the ratings were good that year. So then you put in, and that was the year UCF won the championship anyway, Matt. So, I mean, if you're looking at it and you're seeing how many teams are close, because, like, you can look and see. So Baylor missed out. They were the next closest. Stanford and Iowa, they were the next closest. Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon, Oklahoma. So, like, realistically, the SEC wasn't really close to getting that other team in. That's why stacking the box, I mean, you might pick up Oklahoma every once in a while, but I would argue the opposite. Like, I still think that they're going to put in, if they're down between it, and they're like, do I take this rematch of, like, Alabama-Auburn, or do I just put in Penn State and try to get some fans up there when they have a gigantic alumni base? They're going to add Penn State in. It's very simple. So, like, just getting into that juggernaut is just going to hurt you in the long term. And if you're never, ever in the playoffs again, then you're going to lose that fan base. Your fans aren't going to watch if you're winning 6 games every year. So, like, I have to think the Big 12 schools right now, this is their best chance. Like an undefeated West Virginia or something, I think they have a good chance of getting in, even if they only have 1 loss or whatever. Maybe this is now finally Iowa State was close last year. They had the 2 losses to, like, Oklahoma. If Oklahoma loses, maybe they get in. Like, last year was a weird year because of the uneven scheduling, but whatever. So, I don't know. Well, we'll keep an eye on it. We'll talk about it some more because I keep seeing more and more stuff. The big news is, like, the Pac-12 and the Big 12 are going to just merge. But I think if they merge and get super big, that just sets them up for the Big 10 to just pick them apart. Because, like, then you're splitting the least amount of money in all of the conferences with more teams. They're not going to just magically get more money. Like that $30 million is going to be split between, like, 4 or 5 other teams or however many left, 8. Like, then you're getting, what, $20 million while the Big Ten's raking in 60? Like, that would just be ridiculous to take that deal.
Yeah.
So, I mean, unless they could kind of somehow, I mean, Fox owns a lot of the rights. Maybe Fox buys it out and tries to just say, hey, we're going to flood the money into this market so that we're staying competitive with ESPN. But then again, like, are those games even going to pick up TV ratings? Like, they already released that Texas and Oklahoma had 90% of their ratings. So I would have to think that Fox is going to say, you know what? We have to steal some teams from, like, the ACC instead. Like, but who knows?
I think part of that's going to hinge on what the rest, like, how the rest of the Big 12 looks as a result. Like, is that because Oklahoma was such a one-trick pony for that conference that now there's all this extra pride? Like, everyone knew Oklahoma was so much better than the rest of the conference that did that dilute some of it, that it was like, well, I don't really want to watch that because I already know going in that it's going to be Oklahoma.
Well, that's another thing, too. Like, you got to have, like, TCU beat some of these bigger schools. I don't know if they would play them in the preseason, or not the preseason, but, like, the non-conference. And that's where you have to just reach out to, like, Arkansas or, like, some of these SEC teams that don't really get a lot of wins, Vanderbilt. Just beat them and then hype it up that you beat an SEC team. Like, schedule Tennessee. I know Tennessee played, like, UCLA and stuff like that for that same reason. Like, just do it. Beat them, get the hype, and then hope that they knock an SEC or 2 teams off, and then you already have that win over them. But I don't think it's going to be as simple as what people say. There's too much money and too many state legislatures in, like, college sports that they're not going to just cut off half the United States and have this super hyper-focused southern football league, or their ratings are going to fall faster than the playoff ratings, and then they're going to try to just keep expanding and expanding. I think they know, and I think they're going to keep those smaller schools at least involved because they see how successful March Madness is. You start to let some of those smaller teams in, like a Liberty or Coastal Carolina, everyone views that first week, and then if they win, guess what? They're going to view the next week, and if not, then maybe they'll stake around anyway because they saw the first team and they're like, yeah, that team looked really good. I'll watch them play again, whoever beat them or whatever. But I don't know. That's all I had for today. I don't have anything else for the final bell. I just wanted to hit on that Miami stuff. Did you have anything?
Nope, that was it.
All right. Well, like I said, go to southboundsports.com. We're getting into some of the football stuff. Steelers play the Eagles. I hate the Eagles. So we'll be hitting on that. I hope they win. Really not getting into too much of the stuff because it's only preseason. But fantasy football, if you got some favorite players you like, let us know. We'll be featuring some more next week. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you then.